Welcome back, guys. Thank you for being there again. This is Rafa from Mystic Times, and Emily Moyer is with me. Maybe you've been before to the first hour, so thank you for returning. And I left us with a cliffhanger that I've been looking into a little before we started recording this second half. And as I was just saying, telling Emily, I didn't really find the information that I wanted because it's kind of outdated on the Google Maps. But I'm gonna see. So I'm gonna share. Oh yeah, hi Emily. I don't know if you wanted to just say hi to the second hour, guys. Okay, so share screen and Google Maps. It's not sharing now yet. You can see the map.
Yep.
All right, very good.
I see it. Yep. Okay.
So wait, no. Here you're seeing a big circle. That's another thing. It's interesting now that I think about it, that it's also a circle.
Yeah, it looks very similar. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, but this one is kind of like I don't know if it's a restaurant or an arena, maybe.
It's an arena. That looks like an arena. Yeah.
And the actual thing is where it says Espacio Libre Primo Levi.
I was just going to ask if that was it. Okay, yeah.
And it's interesting that, I don't know why this is called like this, but you see the quality of the thing is so bad. But
what does that mean? What does Espacio Libre Primo Levi mean?
So this is, I'm going to go to the street view for a moment. This is a kind of green area. One of the main characteristics of Montevideo is what we call the Rambla, which is a coast street, let's say, a very important street that goes like all around the coast. And there's this green area that they call, so it would be Cousin Levi. I guess it's a Jewish character, maybe local guy, I don't know. Cousin Levi free space. So it's just like a kind of a park, or not as much as a park, because you can see it doesn't have much. But on the back side of this, we have one of the main attractions, which I don't know if you can see them, is the Montevideo letters. And people are there all day taking pictures. So it's kind of a very centric place. Over there is the arena in the background, behind the what you call this, the palm trees.
Yeah.
And the thing I want to show you, we cannot see it here on the street view. Let me stand, I think, let me stand here. So in this green part over here, yeah, more or less on this green part is where it's built today. Maybe a little bit more to the right, where the trucks are. Behind those trucks is where they built it. But this picture is from before it was constructed. So I have a short video here that will allow us to kind of at least see and get an idea of the thing. Okay, so like I was saying in the first half, the backstory or the cover story for this is that this is so that you can charge your cell phone when you're out in nature.
Okay.
Or to get tourist information of different important places, which I mean partially makes sense. And I excuse me for if there's some noise, there's kids playing outside. It partially makes sense because you have the Montevideo letters, which is a centric place for tourists. So it's interesting that you could get more tourist information here, but I don't know why it needs to be a kind of an antenna kind of thing. They call it intelligence station, is what they're calling it.
Okay. All right. So I asked you what that name was for, because immediately I thought John Levi, right?
Who is
John
that?
Levi, you know who John Levi is?
No.
So he's one of the main people who tells us about Tartaria on YouTube. Okay. He is a very interesting character, the way he presents his information, the kind of symbolism he uses, and how he sort of brands his material, and then how sort of he does his videos, but he doesn't go on other people's shows and do interviews. He don't ever see his face or know anything too much about him. He shares a little bit sometimes, but he's telling us this story about all the things around us that we don't understand. Okay. And so that thing where that thing is called something with the last name named after a person with the last name Levi, right? And I'm wondering if this is the construction, the beginning of what is going to become some sort of fantastic kind of structure that future generations will look at the way we're now looking at Tartaria, and John Levi is explaining it to us. Now, we don't understand how time really works, forward, backward. Maybe time is really going in the opposite direction that we're thinking of. And that the reason John Levi understands this so well is partly because he was involved in another life in creating some of this, or maybe he'll go down in history ultimately as the person who brought the knowledge, like awakened everybody, or told the story well enough that it was recreated, or we have a full understanding of it. So I'm not saying that's why, I'm just making up one possible scenario, right? There's something about these structures that have multiple meanings, or we think it's one thing, but it's really another, that for some reason has acquired the name Levi, who either describes them or builds them or has the park where they are named after them. So that's kind of interesting, right? Levi's are also jeans and whatever, but like, so John Levi is a central narrator in this story of Tartaria coming, the return of Tartaria kind of thing, right? So that structure, think about it. It's this unusual shape. You recognize it as an antenna. When he describes some of these old buildings, and he's not the only one, he's just one of the people that has really added his own bit to this narrative, in a very particular style. But they'll talk about how these buildings are antennas or have spires on them that are antennas, or that generate electricities or energy fields, or the onion domes or whatever, right? That basically these things are technology disguised as buildings or structures. And look at what that thing is. So the idea is there's this thing there, and people will go and they will plug their phone and their phone will charge. Now, what they're not telling people is also they're collecting all the information off the phones, right? And maybe there's a nefarious purpose, like gathering intelligence, or maybe it's kind of like, when you see an artist who does like collage, they go through a magazine, they cut out letters, words, pictures, and then they rearrange it and make their piece of art different than how the things were originally laid out. So they could be using the information to construct a picture of reality that could be used for projection into the future, projection into the past, to create a collage of Montevideo at this time, right? Looks like this. All these things are happening. We have it all condensed right here. And then when you were showing me that thing, both the picture you showed me in the news article last time, it kind of looked one way that reminded me of one thing. And then when you just showed that video, it looks a little different. But there's all these very clear arrangement of like holes or dots that looks like intentional, right? It looks like a code or a barcode or QR code or some way of reading information off of something, right? And then when the other one, the first one you showed me in the first hour on that newspaper article, the way that this sort of wire mesh was kind of put together reminded me of this thing that Jeff and I did. We talked about it on Conspiracy Cocktail, this weird art installation we saw in Phoenix, right? That seemed to have like multiple effects, right? Yeah. Okay. So I'm going to show you this one. Okay. So there was another, scroll down. There's another picture like that. See how it looks like it's mesh? I don't know. Mesh is like, it's like woven material, right? Okay. So there's this thing. Stop sharing. So I'm going to find this one that we were talking
about. And here
about.
you can see the dots that you're talking about.
Yeah. So there's the dots. And then on the other ones, it looks a little bit different. I'm going to look for something. If you stop share there, when we were in, so there's this ASU campus, downtown Phoenix net art installation. I forget what it's called. I have the pictures of it somewhere, but I'm going to see if I can find it by Her Secret is Patience. That's what it's called, right? For some reason, when I was looking at it, it is reminding me of this. Right? This thing is outside of the university campus in downtown in Phoenix, right? And at night it lights up and it looks like that. But this is something that looks like it's catching stuff, but also like generating stuff, and it's wires and metal and things like that. But it has that sort of antenna or funnel or satellite dish look about it as well.
And it has a thing of those kind of, I think they're like 4-dimensional objects, like a kind of, there's one that's very famous, like it's kind of like a bottle that like turns inside into itself.
Yes, right? Yeah, right, yeah. And this is like, it was on the cover of some kind of magazine about different arts you can do with different fibers. And then there was this other thing that we saw in Scottsdale that's a little different, but it's evoking the same thing. It's called Project Sky Song, and that was in Scottsdale. All right, let me see if I can find it. So look at this thing, right? Like it's different, but like this same kind, like why is this, what is this doing? Sure, okay, maybe it's providing some shade, right? But is it catching information? Is it catching energy? Is it giving energy off? Right? Kind of thing. So it's different, but it's another one of these things that like, what is this really for? Right?
Yeah, people may not want to see it or to admit it to themselves, but I mean, if you place a material object with that kind of very mathematical type of shape, it's of course like channeling, I don't know, etheric energy, something like that. Yeah, definitely. Okay. Or just static electricity from the environment, whatever. Yeah.
Correct, right? And we don't know what that's plugged into on the ground. We don't know, like, if there's a plug in your phone thing associated with either of that, if it's gathering energy from the little playground that's underneath it, we don't know, right? And so think about this, like, we have these buildings that we're told are Tartarian buildings that we're also being told were energy devices or were powered by free energy or whatever, right? And, maybe in the beginning it was a simple structure, right? And then people added their energy or their stories to it, right? Like people are going to plug in their phone and they're taking some energy for it and providing their information to this thing in exchange, right? And as the amount of energy that's given off and information that's collected grows, the structure builds and morphs and changes, and whether that is people are adding on to the structure or it begins to project out a vision, a virtual reality based on this information and energy exchange that starts to project the image of a reality around it, right? That you may be seeing the early stages of something that's going to become to the future what these buildings we were looking at in Angkor Wat or whatever are to us now, right? These where people are looking at going, what is this and what were they doing with it, right? Kind of thing where they just like, like and people are going to be trying to figure it out. And some people may get it right. Some people may get it totally wrong. Some people may make up some story about it that, damn shit, we should have thought about that. And that's what it should have been or whatever, right? So that looks to me like the beginning of some kind of structure, and maybe it'll become common all over Montevideo. And then in the future, it's not used for that anymore. Like there was the apocalypse came, or there was a flood and everything goes away, but those are still there and people are trying to figure out what they were. And it starts this, stories and stories and stories, right? But that is really interesting. And it would be, there's the story they're telling you about what it is. And there's probably some truth to that, but there's probably many other stories and some of them are probably also true. Right. Mm-hmm. So that's a good catch. That's an interesting catch there. And the fact that it's called Levi, I find particularly interesting. Yeah. Very synchronistic, right?
And it's weird that we're kind of building stuff that maybe everything does in itself, but we're building buildings that are more like interacting with other vibrations or
a smart environment. Yeah. Right. So let me show you. I wanted to show you some of these pictures that I took. and then maybe we can go and talk about the gurus and something or whatever else you want to talk
about. Yeah. As you were speaking, I'm looking for something related to that guru thing.
All right. So, okay. So here's some of these are just. This is the only pictures I took on my last outing, right? Like I take tons of pictures, but I'm just showing you from the last couple of outings, basically. So remember those bridges we saw? Oh, I'm not sharing. I always think I'm sharing.
No, not yet.
So now I'll share.
The bridges in Sri Lanka, yeah.
Those things I showed you in Sri Lanka that had those bridges, right? And look at this, right? And look at the way things are reflected, and there's like steps and pyramids, right? And then there's this bridge, but the way it reflects in the water, it looks like there's just this circle. It's very psychedelic. You can't tell what is up and what is down. It's hard to tell, right? And that bridge creates that very psychedelic middling effect, right? That is like, what is that? And it takes a second to realize, oh, that's a bridge, and you're seeing trees on the other side through that and whatnot, right? So there's another angle on it. And then what's also so interesting, this hotel here that has a shepherd fairy painting on it, and you can see, right, this is a painting of like Wonder Woman kind of thing, right? And then it has the interesting sky with some real clouds and some chemtrails, and there's some like squares in the sky. Why is it like geometric, right? But you can see all the little details. You can see the pyramid caps and everything like that. It's quite fantastic, quite, a reflection, right? And then here the water is starting to ripple, so that creates a different effect. And this is the Frost building. And if you look at this lit up at night, from some angles, it looks like an owl. From another angle, it looks like Anubis, right? So that's kind of interesting. Here's another one. This one looks like some piece of like computer parts. All these buildings here look like little computer parts or some sort of vent on a side of a computer, right? And then you have it down here in the water. Here's from a little bit farther away. This building is interesting because the sides of the building on this level are cut out and held up with stilts, right? And so it's kind of like a building that looks like it's pieced together here, but in the reflection, it doesn't look like that. In the reflection, it looks like all one, right? So that's kind of fascinating. So that was like one I sent. I can only send a few at a time. So let me get the other email out. Let's see, I have two more emails I want to show you with this. All right, so here's this is that same day, but earlier. So it was a little more bright out, right? And this one here is interesting. Like this also looks like some part of a computer, and then there's a crane that's doing work, right? But it looks like an antenna really reaching up into the sky, into the heavens, and almost touching whatever entity this cloud is disguising it, right? Whatever entity this cloud is trying to disguise. I mean, and look at some of the way, look at these reflections like this, right? Like this is like a fuzzy city off in the distance. Have you ever seen like in the sky where it looks like there's like an astral city in the clouds, right? Like it has that fuzzy sort of appearance like that. And then the way these like stripes in the,
or like in the desert, that thing which you call it like an oasis or something like that.
Yep. The mirage, the desert kind of thing, right? This thing over here is really interesting. This building, it's built in like these steps. I have another picture of it I'm going to show in a little bit, but there's like this weird triangle net sort of thing that's built on one side of it. And I'm trying to understand why, right? I'm trying to figure out what the purpose of it is. Okay, so this is that same building from a different, the one I was just talking about from a different angle, right? Like it's weird. It looks like a boat or a ship that got like turned upside down and stuck there. But this wall here from another angle, it goes up over the building and it's a triangle. And the way it reflects in the water at night looks like a little crystal pyramid, right? So it's a weird looking building. Is it there for some functional purpose that I don't understand? Or is it there to create that little crystal reflection in the water? And then it's harder to tell from here, but each of these floors is at a different angle, right? They're not all the same. They're like, it's a very unusual building.
Yeah.
So there's that one. And then I have one more, just a few more to show you. So here's again, this is that building from another angle, right? And look at this. So this is the train tracks that go across the water with the graffiti on it. And some of this graffiti has been there since I first visited Austin in 1995, right? And look at the way this reflects in the water. Look how perfectly, there's like a whole other version of the same reality down there, right? The crane looks like an antenna pointing up, pointing down. The graffiti is almost as clear in the reflection as it is here, right? everything, the trees. It's amazing, right? It really and there's just a closer picture of it. And then this is one I just took, which there's no buildings in this one. Look at these trees though. The trees almost look like the thing in Angkor Wat.
Yeah.
Right? So I cannot remember what it's called, but like there's something that happens to petrified leaves. Okay. So it's almost like the trees got petrified and turned into stone or cement. This looks exactly like that thing in Angkor Wat. So what if there was some energetic thing that happened that turned this into stone and nobody fucking built those temples? Like the tree turned into stone and like the faces of the people who perished in the energy event are captured in the way the tree turned to stone. Like, have you ever seen those trees that look like they have faces like in the wood and stuff like that? So I just like to make up these stories and tell myself, but it's again hard to tell, right? If you look at this, like which one is, if I flip the picture upside down, you might not know which one is which, right? So I love doing this. This is one of my, I'm going to put together like a photography exhibit or something like that for the wall of my clinic or something, because I love doing this so much. So anyway, I just wanted to share those with you.
Yeah.
But some of those pictures look like the thing in Sri Lanka or this thing in Angkor Wat. It's fascinating, isn't it?
Yeah, I like those types of pictures. I have a few of those as well. Not handy right now, like to show you, but I like taking those types of pictures too.
Yeah.
Especially when it's, for me, I really like when the sky is strange. Not necessarily if there is a cityscape, but just nature, or like the last one with the trees, etc. And to show those reflections, and when the sun goes down, the colors and those types of pictures for me are so beautiful.
Amazing, right?
So first of all, the building you were just showing, I wanna share my screen as well. I love sharing screen to show you.
Me too. That's like one of my favorite things to do.
Let me just see, where is this? So we have a building, and it kind of connects with the last structure, because it's the building of the company that is, it's another, I don't know if it's a company, the name that you use, but it's a public, it's the phone company, the public phone company, right?
Okay.
And they have this building that is similar to one of the ones that you just showed me. Let me see here. So I'm going to do the street view first. If I see how, there. And like focus on it first, just so I can show you. And it's also in an interesting part of the city. No, I'm not seeing it right now. Okay, so I'm gonna just so I don't bore people with my searching, I'm gonna start sharing the screen and and let's see if I can find the building. So first of all, as I was just looking, there we go. First, this house, I don't know, it kind of reminds me of the idea of Tartaria as well that we were speaking about. But I'm still not too deep into Tartaria. I just kind of have a very bird's eye view of the thing, and it's like we were speaking at the first half. It kind of informs some of my understandings of things. But the building, I can see that it should be there in front of the thing. I don't know why I can't see it. Maybe this is not a good angle to see it.
So that's a weird building too.
Which
That
one? The
looks
one
like
with
that.
the colors?
These ones that looks like the air, like the air filters that you have in buildings and vents. That's interesting. Yeah.
Maybe if I turn around over here from a different angle, I don't really know how to work.
Do you know what the name of the building is?
Everything. Yeah, I think I'm not in the correct area because it's very tall. I think it's just called the Antel building.
Just don't do a Google Earth search. Just do an image search. Just type in the name of the building and do an image search, and that might help you find it faster.
Yeah. Let me see. Ah, yeah. Oh,
yep.
Torre de las Telecomunicaciones. Okay,
very similar. Yep.
Yeah. Right. It's a pretty.
So if somebody wants to tell, somebody's saying, "Oh no, it's just like purely for style or architectural design bullshit. That is, there's some function that is doing, right? Because that is not easy to create. And I recognize that people have stupid amounts of money. Like it has that same exact triangular fan that I'm talking about, right? This is doing something. I don't know what this is, right? But, you know, this is a technology, right? And we don't understand what it is. And people are just, you know, oh, it's just stylistic. It's a modern that architecture, you know, blah, blah, blah. Okay, right? Like they're going to spend all this extra time just to make it look cool. It doesn't, you know, or whatever. Yeah. Sure, I believe that on some level, maybe someone does that to their house, but that adds years to the project. That makes it
also looks like a boat. And
like
here you can see
the boat turned upside down and stopped right there. Like, what if there's like a perpendicular universe, right? We think of parallel ones, but what if there's one that's like this way and the boat is coming into the water? Like, you know, your Montevideo's on the water, Austin is on the water. What, I mean, who the fuck? I'm just making shit up. But like, when you see something, you're like that, like, yeah, you got to.
And it's right next to some train tracks.
Same here. The one here is right next to some train tracks too.
Which I don't know if they are actually used nowadays.
The ones here are not. The ones here are the ones that this one. There's a set not too far away that is used, but the set that's right near it not used.
And here we can see some pictures taken from across the water. It would be nice if we could like get the reflection like in your pictures too. But I guess this is more like, this is river, so it's more, it's not as still as a lake would be.
So this is a river here too in town. It's just, you have to catch it at the right time. Right. You have to catch it at the right time from the right angle.
In the morning, maybe.
Right. Yeah. You're in the other side of the world. So it would be like a different way of doing it than here, because you're in the Southern hemisphere. But I'm sure that I'm sure it's possible to catch something like that. It's just maybe really particular when you have to do it, or it has to be a certain kind of day, right? Like very little wind, sky a certain amount clear, you know, that kind of thing.
And here's like a kind of overview, a cartoon overview of the whole area where they built the building and a couple other places. And here we can see again when they were building it, I guess the same or similar kind of structure. What did you call this? A kind of interlaced, no, something like that.
Yeah, like it looks like a mesh, right? There's a lot of things around Austin that are looking very similar to that, right? And so these are both capital cities on a river, right? So what is the energy that they're trying to funnel in or pull out, or what are they doing with that energy? So it would make sense that there's some of these similarities.
Yeah, and playing with weird angles.
Yeah. Yeah. There's something like this too, that Ontel sign with the rainbow, like just a block or two from this building, there's a one that says love that looks just like that with the rainbow, right? So we're seeing a lot of the same things. That's very interesting. Wow, some of these spikes on the building are fascinating.
Like this?
There's like spikes, yeah. That is really interesting.
Oh, and you can see two people, I guess they're cleaning the glasses.
Right.
The windows.
Yeah, right.
Oh,
that's been crazy.
Yeah.
Yep.
And I believe like this is a very a place like right next door to this or part of this complex of buildings is one of the business hubs. So there's like what you call this kind of work, call centers for like even for like Amazon and stuff like that. Very around this place. Like this would be.
And of course, I saw one sign that said 5G.
Yeah.
There you go. Yep.
I don't know how spread it's been here yet, the 5G, but yeah, they definitely have plans for it.
I think 5G is a different thing than people think it is. Both the people who think it's wonderful and the people who think it's terrible. I think none of us actually know what it is. I think it's something entirely different than what it's been represented as. Not that it doesn't do any of those things that we think it does, but I don't think that the purpose is what we've been told. I think there's an entirely different purpose, whether you think the conspiratorial thing about it or the, oh my God, it's going to make my computer so much faster, whatever thing. You're like, that's not the point. Neither of those things is the point. There's something completely else going on with it. I don't know what it is. But yeah, I'm starting to see things that look almost like I'm going to find one of these reflection pictures. I keep thinking the next one is going to be a reflection picture. The next one is going
like here in my screen. Let me see if I was to write it here.
Reflecting in the water. Yeah. All right, let's see. Look at the, so that, we're
I don't know if this is Uruguay.
Oh, okay, there's one.
Oh, there we go.
There's one.
Very good.
So you probably have to go over to the other side of the river to get it, and you'd have to catch it when it's just right. That's interesting. That okay. And it looks like there's train tracks on both sides. There's train track here where the picture is being taken from, and train track on the side over near the building you showed.
And so much garbage. Oh my God.
And so much garbage. Yep.
But yeah, we can see kind of. Let me see if there's some similar pictures underneath.
There's another one. There's another one over here down on the left. Right, it's in the dark. It's dark outside. Right there. Let me see. Let's make that one big. So if there's some things reflecting and others.
For some reason here it says San Francisco skyline.
Oh, that's
New York skyline. No, but
okay, it's there though. Antel, it is that.
Yeah.
Yeah. So so I think there probably are some, but it's not. It's harder to get the picture than it is in my situation here. But I'm sure it exists.
Yeah.
How deep is your river?
I don't know. I don't know. What I do know is that when they are bringing the ships to dock, they need to send a specialist who knows the bottom of the river, and so kind of like the captain gives him the wheel or whatever. I don't know if that's common, but I know that.
Yeah. Interesting. All right. So tell me a little bit. So I want you to tell me a little bit about, oh, look, there's some down there. There's one Marina Base. That's something else. Okay, never mind. But you're going to catch one day. I know you're going to find the exact perfect one that's going to make me unable to tell which is the right side up and which is the upside down. You're going to take the picture. I already know it. So, okay, I wanted you to tell me a little bit about some of this Hindu like stuff that you feel like was passed down really clearly and really purely. And then you had also said you wanted to talk to me a little bit about gurus, because I've been paying attention to something that brings kind of those two things together. So stop the screen share so I can see your handsome face and tell me about the Hindu spirituality and the gurus and whatever.
Where to start? I find it amazing how well, I don't know, maybe we could share a video, but maybe we would get like censored for sharing something like Hindu monks chanting, you know, the reciting what we know as the different books from the tradition, I don't know, Upanishads, etc. And I find it amazing how they have like a particular kind of technique that they chant with a certain rhythm, and it becomes so hypnotic that I don't know what state of consciousness those guys get into, but even like I think it's so amazing how large the amount of information, you know, those books. I don't even know if we were to think about it like in pages, it's like millions of pages probably, or hundreds of thousands of verses, or millions even perhaps of verses, written even or written, I don't know if it's the right word, but composed in Sanskrit, which is in itself a kind of a magical kind of language. I think together with the Hebrew language, Sanskrit has like something else that not every language has. And perhaps before I mentioned in passing the Tamil culture, Sanskrit comes from Tamil. So, and they are supposedly from Lemuria. And I remember listening to something from like an audiobook of a book of, what's this guy? I'm blanking on his name, Rudolf Steiner.
Yeah.
And he has these like tales of Lemuria and Atlantis.
Mm-hmm.
And especially what's interesting for me is how he describes the difference in thinking, let's say, that these early humans had, or earlier. There's this idea in theosophy, and I guess also in anthroposophy, which is the Rudolf Steiner thing, of the root races and like cycles of humanity. And how I believe we're in the 5th root race now, and each root race has like 7 different kind of sub races or sub incarnations, I guess, across the timeline, which kind of they live together in time wise. They kind of share a little bit, but at the same time they kind of spread through time. And the guys from Lemuria, he describes them as being more as being more, I don't know really how to describe it, because he's very intense in the way he portrays things. But basically they have different kind of perceptions of the world. And like I believe the Atlanteans were more like based upon memory, and so if you had done something, then you were like valuable for the community because of that. But others had a more, and they even used language differently and words differently. I don't know, I'm not being very good at describing this, but yeah, I think it's amazing how all this information from, I believe it's probably tens of thousands of years and maybe even more. I haven't put it out yet as we are recording, but I had this conversation with this guy called Michael Cremo. You know about him?
Yeah, I saw that you have that scheduled. Yeah, I know. I've not ever dug deep into his work, but I'm aware who he is, and he's been around for a long time and sort of.
Yeah, so he talks about things like extreme human antiquity, so things that are found perhaps buried in the ground in places that are millions of years old, that would imply humans were there millions of years ago, maybe time travel, or maybe we don't really know about our past or about the cycles that happen so clearly. And then on the guru thing, I don't know really how to express it, because there's this guy who, for me, he's very interesting. When I listen to him, he says things that are like mind-blowing and very like you recognize this guy has had lots of training, lots of when he tells about his story, he was born into a kind of with certain connections to different gurus of his region, of his time, and they all trained him. And so the latest story that I understand about him is that he claims, or he is an incarnation of Shiva. Okay. And let me just show you a picture. I mean, I respect him, and at the same time, I'm very amused by him, by how funny he is.
That's a bonus, right? Like that you can find somebody ridiculous and like interesting and whatnot, right?
And respect him, but at the same time,
if a person is so intelligent but they're so serious, I get bored with them after a while. Like, tell me a fucking crazy made up story so I think you're batshit. You're more interesting to me if you are, you know?
I'm going to get some pictures of him. And actually, he's interesting in how his appearance has changed through time. Like, so far, I'm like, okay, I'm going to go with the idea that you're an incarnation of Shiva.
Yeah, it's more fun.
It's definitely okay. So I'm going to start sharing my screen. And where is this guy? I think this is it. Yes. Okay. So this is his name. His name is Nidhyananda. This is an older picture of him. Let me show you the one that's going to come up here.
He looks like my stepbrother.
Right. So this is an older picture of him. This might be like, I don't know, the 2000s or around that time. Right. So it's kind of kind of feminine. You know how they sometimes they portray Shiva and he's very kind of androgynous kind of thing. He's got that element. And so for some time I'm like on and off listening to him, and eventually there's been like of course controversies and maybe even sexual stuff around him, but I try to.
This is the guru you were wanting to tell me about, yes?
Yeah.
Okay.
And I try not to focus so much on all the news around him or around anybody in general. Right. Because it kind of distracts from the thing. It's just something to pay attention to, of course. Right? So he's kind of charming and kind of androgynous, whatever.
Yep.
Kind of even looks like a woman in this one.
Yeah.
And eventually with time, he starts like putting on some weight and then like getting a beard and looking a lot more masculine, right?
Yeah.
His appearance starts changing, and I think this is a more current one. Doesn't even seem like the same person.
So what's interesting is this will, I mean, I have noticed this amongst people who have attained a high level of spirituality. And by that, I don't necessarily mean they're religious or that they are really well studied in scriptures or know all the history, but that they are like having a kind of unique experience of being here now and being in a body and experiencing space and time, that these people at times will look more like a woman, at times will look more like a man. And I actually think that same energy is what's driving all of this transgender, non-binary pronouns. That's the distortion, right? The social movement to make everything trans, blah, 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 is the inversion of this very natural process that is happening for people who are achieving a certain type of spiritual level that I'm not talking about is like superior or inferior, right? It's just this people, maybe they've been on a number of lifetimes, right? And in this one, the great fusion, the great coming together, the great androgynous, like the perfect androgyny is going to be achieved, or they're getting closer to that in whatever preceding in lifetimes or lifetimes that will come after. And so they're starting to switch back and forth. What's going to be really interesting is to see how many people who are doing like transgender surgeries now will eventually switch back, or how many times they're going to switch, right? Because there's this back and forth thing, because you're kind of moving between realities, right? And it's confusing when you were in one reality and you were a man, suddenly you find yourself in another reality, and this one you're a woman and you're trying to figure yourself out, right? So I think that there's some of that maybe going on with this person, right? And I've never heard or seen this person before, but there's a few pictures you put up there where he looks exactly like my stepbrother. So it's very weird.
Yeah, let me return to the screen share. I was just making sure that we were recording. For some reason, I thought I hadn't started recording, but we are.
Okay.
Okay. What's also interesting is all the Baroque, or whatever to call it, gold and extreme things around him, which are probably just made out of some kind of cheap plastic, right?
Yeah.
So it's like kind of quiche.
Yep.
Like over here, right? Everything is very over the top, kind of like.
Yep. Okay. In this picture, he looks exactly like my stepbrother. Exactly. Wow. I'm gonna go like. I haven't talked to my stepbrother in over 10 years. We had a bad falling out and whatever, but I almost want to go find a picture, because you're going to be like, what the ever loving fuck, dude? I don't know if he's even on Facebook anymore, if I could find a picture of him. But yeah, that is crazy. It's crazy.
And this guy is so good at explaining things. You kind of get into some kind of a trance when you're listening to him. Let me see. Right, so more pictures from these are previous ones, right? Again, looking more, I mean, younger, of course, but also more effeminate. This is him as a child, I think. Pretty sure.
Wow, that's a weird picture.
So he had this very unusual spiritual training where he had many contact with many different I guess maybe enlightened beings or gurus or masters of his time and of his region. So one, again here, right? So very, very different in the different parts of his life.
Yeah.
So something that caught my attention now is that he has this, I think you write it like this, he's creating this kind of digital or something like that, digital citizenship, I think is what we could call it.
Okay.
He has, there's this mystic or mythic, mythic, I believe it's a city or something like that, that is called Kailasa, yeah,
Okay.
which is like the abode of Shiva.
Okay.
And he has created this thing called, let's see, called Kailasa, right?
Okay.
Yeah, I'm not finding.
So this is like there's like some kind of city on chain kind of cryptocurrency, and then there's also like this is part of where like NFTs and things are going to be going, is you're going to be able to buy digital real estate. Right? So he's building his digital, his like, so someone, whether it be the country or a family, owns Kailasa in this reality, right? But he can buy it somewhere else. And the idea, I think, is that eventually that will almost translate into actually owning the city. Like I know someone who's into these cryptocurrencies where he can like buy Dallas and buy Austin and whatever, right? In the metaverse or in the digital realm. Yeah.
And it's very interesting that also they went ahead and they bought some, some terrain or some territory in the coast of Ecuador here in South America, which I'm not sure, but I guess that's where he lives. And he's like almost daily doing like 4-hour satsangs and 4-hour like presentations where he's sharing information from I guess from the Vedas. He mentions the Agamas, which I'm not very acquainted with. So here we go. You have Ecuador here, right? Just for reference, down here is Uruguay, and so here is this place in these islands.
Yeah.
Right, very here at the north. I don't know if we. I hope we can get a nice look at the thing. Yeah. Maybe it wasn't built when they took this picture, but I think we have something here. Let me close this. It's not too clear. But they've bought land over here, and so I'm pretty sure they're making a giant community.
Is the original Kailasa a real place, or is it like from mythology?
Okay, let's look at that and confirm.
Okay.
Wikipedia.
I think you spelled it wrong, and there's another place with the same. Yeah. Okay.
Look, we have an article about his Kailasa, but I want to get.
But what did you tell me originally? What you told me originally? Kailasa is this. What did you say about it?
Like the abode of Shiva, but kind of like a mystical place, but it might be also connected to a mountain, perhaps.
So type in original Kailasa. Try that.
Okay. And yeah, maybe I'm not writing it correctly. I think it seems like it could have 2 ways, but. I mean, it's a very, very traditionally known thing. I'm curious that it's not coming up like first is up here. I get like lots of hits about.
So he's done such a good job that we can no longer determine the genesis of the thing he was inspired by, because he has made himself one with that. He has literally taken that over. Okay, so this is what I'm talking about with this telling stories convincingly.
I've also seen it or heard it mentioned like this, Kailash. So I think, yeah, there's a mount called Kailash.
Okay.
Which is basically
okay,
the
so
same word.
Okay. Yeah, yeah.
And Lord Shiva in Kailash. Okay, so here we go.
All right, there we go.
Mount Kailash is Shiva's abode. That doesn't mean that Shiva is present in physical form, only in Kailash, and hiding, Shiva is an energy, so he's present in every element of
this is perfect. This goes to exactly what we've been talking about here, right? That there's just this structure that projects this energy. Lemuria can be in India, can be in Shasta, can be in by Cuba or whatever. If you have certain like rocks, minerals, whatever, and there's certain frequency, it like creates the energy and the projection of this kind of mythical place. And so yep, look at that.
Here they say there's a face here. I can kind of see it.
That's exactly what we've been talking about. So this goes to everything. We remember what I was saying about, I look at the building and it looks like fucking Anubis, right? Like it just looks different now than it did in ancient times, the way that we're constructing. What if mountains were primitive buildings that have just got, over time, dirt, leaves, whatever fall on them, or, you know, whatever it is, right? And when it, certain light and certain sound hits it in a certain way, the image, the energy projects this thing that looks like the face of a god. And then stories are created, and then people think it's, oh, look what we got there. There we go, right?
I'm gonna put the faces from Angkor Wat.
Right?
The same kind of style even.
Yep.
Right? This one with, where was this? I think here's the face, yeah. Same kind of style. That's funny. That's even like mimicking an artistic human style.
This is how this happens. This is how these stories are created, and how convincingly you tell the story. People think, was Jesus a real person or not? Right? Was Shiva a real person or not? Right? And this dude that you're telling me about is telling the story so convincingly that one day no one will even remember that this Kailash existed, and they'll just think, if he can tell the story more convincingly than whoever told this story, then that will be Kailash.
Yeah, and I wouldn't be surprised if there's like stories of like doors opening in the mountain and UFOs coming out.
UFOs going in and out, all the same thing, right? Look at that one right there. Look at that one picture with the peephole.
This one? No, which one?
Look right there. There's brown on the right here. You have the white one with the face, and then next to it, the brown one that looks like a base that has an installation that people would say, oh, this is the underground base where the aliens and the UFOs go and whatever, right? See it?
You mean this one that I have opened now?
Yeah, the brown part. So on the outside, it looks like a face of a god. On the inside, you have a high-tech installation or a particle accelerator or UFO, whatever kind of thing, right? There's a kind of crystal called like I have this one, it's in the other room. It looks like a snow globe, and then there's a clear part and there's a window into it, and you see into it. I forget what it's called. It's not a regular window on a crystal. It's a certain kind of, I'll find it. It would take me too long to find it to show you now, but I'll find it for next time we talk or whatever. But okay, so that is interesting. And when you were talking, stop the screen share so I can show you something.
Yeah.
So when you were talking, you were talking about Rudolf Steiner.
Yeah.
Right. Well, first we started talking about chanting, right? And I remember one time listening to this gentleman named Duncan Trussell, like who's a guest often on the Joe Rogan podcast, chant Nam-myoho Renge Kyo, right? Which is like a Buddhist chant. And he got going at in the beginning, it just sounds like Nam-myoho Renge, but then he started adding parts to it, and he gets in a rhythm, and suddenly, like I was just listening on the radio, but my whole room is vibrating, and he's like, blah, 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 right? And he was just doing it for like 3 or 4 minutes. When you do this for hours and hours, you're creating this vibration that's going out and out and out, and more people doing it and whatever, to where like the whole reality is morphed and changed, right? So it is power. Like, I don't even know necessarily what some of that stuff means, but I do like listening to it. It's like, wow, that's fascinating. So I was doing that. I was looking to see if I could find that video of him, but I can't find it right now. And then you were telling your story about Rudolf Steiner, and you were trying to explain the Lemuria Atlantis civilization. So a few years ago, I read this book by this gentleman named Dan Millman, who's famous for a book called The Way of the Peaceful Warrior that was also made into a movie. And he's an interesting guy. He was a gymnast from California who had like a lot of the same struggles in life that I had, right? And he lived in the same area that I grew up in and whatnot. The movie's pretty good. But he wrote a later book that less people know about called The Sacred Journey of the Peaceful Warrior. And this is about sort of his shamanistic experience in Hawaii, right? And as part of that experience, his teacher, an older Hawaiian woman, you know, explained to him how he found her was quite fascinating. How he found his way to her was fascinating and true. The way that she described the Lemuria, the way in the book that Lemuria versus Atlantis is described is exactly like what you're saying, right? And so there was no talk about Rudolf Steiner in that book, but the book is an easy to read book. It's an excellent book. We read it about a year and a half ago. I highly recommend it to people who are trying to find like more meaning in their everyday life and allow themselves to just have experiences, right? And what I like about Dan Millman is he's had these various teachers throughout his life, but none of them became gurus to him because they taught him a lesson and then they sent him on his way and they disappeared from his life. And one of the things that concerns me about a lot of the spirituality that emanates out of these Hindu and Vedic culture kind of things is as I can't speak for other people, but Westerners get interested in them, these gurus pop up. So in the last few weeks and months, Laura and I have watched documentaries about Osho, right? Or the Bhagwan, they call it, right? Osho. And also Bikram, the guy who created Bikram yoga, right? And both of these people had a certain kind of charisma and generated like huge cults that led into like a lot of really crazy stuff around them, right? And the reason they're able to attract so many people to them is because there is some truth. Now, the one with the Osho is harder to understand. Like I couldn't quite find what it was. Everybody just kept saying how amazing this man was, but there was never anything said or done or shared that made me think that this person was anything other than a creepy old man, right? But, you know, I think he was just in the right place at the right time to capitalize on the West becoming interested in the East, right? In a very pop culture kind of way. But the things, I don't know, did you watch that documentary called Wild Wild Country? I think
I did, and in fact, I have friends, like older friends, who met him and who are his sannyasis, his
yes.
students, whatever to put it in English. And some of the stories that they've told me of meeting him, they have this supernatural thing. Like, for example, one of them told me that, and also the way that they eventually get to him is very magical.
Yeah.
So he's like one of these guys who has some kind of an electromagnetic aura that is enormous or something like that, probably from reincarnations from other from other times when they also were very spiritually advanced, and that she like saw him in the distance, and suddenly it's like his eyes were like right here. Yeah. She was like and he was a very magnetic kind of guy.
So there's that truth, right? That exists, right? Otherwise all that wouldn't happen. But then you saw all the crazy shit that grew out of that. So like you have them like planning to kill people and poison people and I'm sure that it's a Netflix documentary. Probably
and you know what also, now I'm remembering, Osho eventually he had to escape. Yeah. And you know where he went? He came here to Uruguay, and he actually had a cédula, is what we call it here, an ID, a Uruguayan ID card.
Yeah. So there's like, right, there's there's some truth that this person, either through their teachings or just through their general presence and being, imparts, that is undeniable, is tangible, right? But then this entire sick culture is erected around this person somehow being more important than everybody else, right? And that there must be this group that gathers around this person. And this person never tells these people to go away, right? And to me, that's the problem with gurus, right? And it's a teacher is someone who imparts wisdom to you for a period of time and then sends you on their way. Maybe later you come back from another lesson, but they don't insist that you live near them, you live like them, you live around them, you follow the rules, you give up the rest of your life. That is like, that's the difference, right? And then this other one we watched was this Bikram guy who had this really effective method of yoga that either he stole from someone else's teachings according to other people or came up with himself according to him. But even if he came up with them himself, he was, because of his charisma, better able to put that out there in the world. And then all of this disgusting culture came around him and he was acting crazy and whatever. And there's still to this day, with all of the information that's come out against him and all the lawsuits, and he had to run away and hide and all that kind of stuff too, there are still people, he can't come into this country, but people from this country will go to other countries to take his courses and whatever. And he keeps those people, when people go to do yoga, to learn yoga from them, he keeps them there forever, right? Like, and they all are, it's just this weird, big, incestuous, never anyone leaving, no outside communication kind of thing. And to me, that's not good. Right? Like a useful, I mean, I understand, sure, we go away for a weekend or a week or 2 weeks to have a seminar or retreat or whatever. But if you can't, like, part of knowing if what you're learning is meaningful or effective for you in any way is taking it out into their regular life when you're away from the teacher and seeing if it works. And if it works, great. And if it doesn't, come back. Okay, this works, this didn't work. Great. This is what you need to know. Go back, live your own life, whatever. This idea that because someone is interesting or special, or we like them, or they taught us something, that we all must gather around them, and it's fucking weird, dude, right? Like, this is like a serious problem. And it takes us back to the question of, is this person or are these teachings worth my attention? And if they're worth my attention, how much? And if the only way to have those is to give it all of your attention on an ongoing basis, there's something wrong with that, right? Like, I've never seen, like, that is not, like, even in like the weirdest coaching and athletic situations, at some point the kids go home and spend the night at their parents' house and play with their friends, right? This is like this weird thing that's happened. And a lot of these cults and this guru stuff seems to emanate from Hindu cultures, Vedic cultures, Indian kind of cultures. So while there's this truth that is still available to be accessed all these hundreds and thousands of years later, there's also a distortion of that vibration that is like almost louder than the teachings, that is louder in some ways than the teaching themselves. And it's all centered around this guru stuff. Now, this person that you are talking about right now, like, he seems a little bit different than Osho or Bikram or whatever, right? And so I don't know if he's claiming to parlay some important historical thing, or if he's literally just making shit up, right? And people are thinking it's this other thing. Again, we don't understand which direction time is going in. So maybe he's going to tell this story so convincingly now that they'll look back and say, oh, this is that story. I don't know, right? But I think that, like, when we have to be like, and we have to be careful about this in this reality we're in now, where, like, you know, we're in a very divided reality and culture, right? Very polarized. And there's this temptation to want to be around the people that agree with you, right? Like, I want to live around other people who didn't get poked, right? And I want to only frequent the businesses where they don't require, and there's a part of that that's like really okay, right? But, you know, sometimes when there's not the balance of something else that is in opposition to that which we like or that which we believe, shit can get pretty crazy. Like, there's nothing that sounds worse to me than living on a piece of land with 100 people that agree with me. That sounds fucking awful to me, right? But that's what a lot of these people want to do, you know. So it's a strange thing. But this Dan Millman guy, what's interesting, so back to the other thing, the Dan Millman, his teachers let him go, right? So I was looking to see if I could find the quote in the book about like the section, if it was available, just the segment where he talks about Atlantis and Lemuria, and I couldn't find it. But what's interesting is when I went looking for it, I found that he has another book out, and what you're never gonna fucking believe this. You're gonna love it. Check this
You were looking for that right now.
I was looking for this sacred journey of the peaceful warrior, so I could see if I could find a paragraph
to show it now. Yeah,
I couldn't find it, but he has a newer book out called The Hidden School. And look at the picture, Rafa. It's the fucking buildings reflecting in the water. And it's called The Hidden School, Return of the Peaceful Warrior, right? How coincidental is that? I've never seen him heard him talk about the buildings reflecting in the water or anything like that. And look what the book is about. So this was from 2018. I haven't read this book. I didn't know this was one. His stuff is really good, right? But The Hidden School reveals a book within a book. Well, that sounds like a world within a world.
Would you zoom into the cover a little bit, just to like what is? It's it's buildings, right? It's a city.
Yeah, and it's reflecting in the water, just
There
like
you
we were talking about, and the multicolored sky, like I was showing in some of the pictures. So The Hidden School reveals a book within a book, a quest within a quest, and a bridge between worlds. We were talking about the bridge before, right? A must-read journey of transformation. Few other books so skillfully combine story and substance than this peaceful warrior adventure, right? So I'm gonna go get this book now because the way it just played into our conversation is amazing, right? And so what I was talking about earlier about like the invisible college, like maybe there really is the hidden city here, right? Maybe it's of substance or maybe it's of story, but either way, there's something to be learned there. I'm going to buy this book when we get off the show.
And it's like, you know, this place I think it's in California called, it's one of these mountains where people meet Saint Germain and the Ascended Masters, the Mount Shasta. Yeah.
That's where Lemuria here supposedly is. Yeah.
There is there's like different parts of the world that have like a particular mountain or stuff like that, which has all these kind of type of stories attached to it.
There's like Mount Meru. There's
Mount Meru is the same as the one that I just showed you. I saw that they have
That's the same as Kailasha.
It has two names, yeah.
Okay, yeah. So Mount Meru is fascinating, right? Yeah. And it's also, there's another name for Mount Meru too. It's called, Tracy Twyman used to call it something different. Hold on a second. Tracy.
And I was thinking about one here that is called, it's not here in Uruguay, actually it's in Argentina. I believe it's in Cordoba. It's called Mount Uritorco, I think is the pronunciation. And it has all the same kind of stories around it, the UFOs, the invisible cities, the kind of crystal cities inside the mountains, stuff like that, you know?
It's also, there's another name for Mount Meru, which is also called Mount Analog.
Wow.
Right, that's another, it's the same place, but it's different. But Tracy Twyman used to talk about this as being like this really important sort of spot. Like there's sort of some, it's almost like that, whatever that structure is connected to different times, right? Or in different spaces. It's very interdimensional. But that's interesting that that's Kailasha then too. And also Mount Analog, right? But this stuff is important in these, the way what's happening in our reality right now. But look at this, in this thing here where I'm mixing things. So I actually
look, you see the gesture that you were doing just now? Yeah. This Mount Meru, it's also famous for a story that's been on my mind recently, a Hindu story that I actually even thought about talking with you about. But I mean, I know certain stories, but I'm not very good at retelling them necessarily because I don't know, I've just told them to myself. So I don't have practice in sharing these stories. But there's this story called The Churning of the Ocean of Milk, which imagine the ocean of milk maybe would represent the Milky Way, okay, the galaxy. And it's a time when the asuras and the devas, so what you could maybe say the demons and the demigods, so the guys maybe from the underworld and the guys from Mount Olympus or stuff like that, Indra and those kind of gods, and on the other side you have the asuras, and they are rivals. But in this particular story, I don't remember right now for what reason, but they decide to work together because they want to churn the ocean of milk, basically to make butter or stuff like that, which is kind of a recurring theme in Hinduism, the butter. And
right,
so
totally, the ghee, the butter, always,
And this also connects with Angkor Wat, now that I'm thinking of it. So what they do is they grab a snake each from one side, and the snake is like coiled around Mount Meru, which in the story is like they express it as being the center of the universe or something like that. And they are pulling back and forth, working together in order to churn the ocean of milk with the mountain. Okay.
Yeah.
And actually in Angkor Wat, there's bridges that go into the temple, which have the representation of this story on the, like, they have little people carved in stone as well. Are you hearing a violin, or is it just me?
Yes, I hear it.
I guess it's out here. And they're having this back and forth kind of, what you call it, like a tug of war or something like that.
Yeah.
And they are churning the ocean of milk with the whole mountain. Let me see here. I have a, right?
Yeah.
The Devas and the Asuras. Oh, the Asuras also sometimes correlated with the Titans in the, if we go to the Greek thing, right? You have the old gods and the new gods. But I also find it interesting that there's this god in more in like the Iran region, or is it Iran or Pakistan, or so in kind of the border between India and Pakistan, you know, you have this difference in, like, there's this god called Ahura Mazda, right? I think it's in Zoroastrianism. I believe it's
yeah.
We talked about this last time, I think. Zoroastrianism, yeah. So there's this god called Ahura Mazda, which is represented with the circle and the wings and stuff like that. And it's interesting that Ahura sounds very similar to Asura, right? Which are the demons. And then you have the Soma, which in this area is called Homa. So it's like the S and the H.
Yeah.
And so there's like this in the story. So, and generally the Asuras, they are represented more like brown people, and the Devas are more like white people. So kind of like
black and white, good and evil, dark
and more like indigenous and European or Aryan, you know, those kind of polarities of the different root races of humanity. And yeah, no, they don't have any more images.
Scroll back up. So right there. So, okay, see how here they're calling it Mount Mandara, which is a spur of Mount Meru. So one part of Mount Meru is called Mount Mandara, right? Remember what we were talking about earlier about how maybe these buildings, they have an energy, the energy creates a vibration that projects that there's something else there that maybe, right? Like this other reality or other dimension. There's a woman, when you get, okay, so there's, if you can stop screen share for a second so I can show you something. So yeah, there is the pulling, and it's making, but look at that pulling, it makes the world like upside down. And
I'll bring it back.
Yeah, look at that picture. Look at, like, there's like a reflective world down here.
And there's even this part of the story where Vishnu has had several incarnations across time. One of them was Krishna, one was Rama from the bridge to Sri Lanka. And before, he kind of has incarnations that kind of represent the stages of evolution. So he goes like a fish and then a mammal, etc. But one of the incarnations is a woman for some reason. And she kind of seduces the Asuras so that they lose this thing. Right, they're churning the ocean of milk because they want to get I think it's the Soma or the Amrita, which is like the nectar, so I don't know, the DMT, the pineal gland, something connected to that.
Yeah.
And they are playing together, but the asuras allegedly are going to double cross the devas. But Vishnu comes into the picture and distracts the asuras with a woman, with a very sexy woman, so that only the devas get the amrita. Here it is, the amrita. Yeah.
Okay, so look in that picture you showed though, how they're like, bring that picture back up for a second. I want to show you something and then I want to tell you something. So,
and I can show you other representations of this, like drawn, which are a lot clearer.
Right?
But
so
yeah.
This is kind of like a smaller version of a bigger thing that's happening down here, right? Like it's almost like a reflective, it's like layered, like when we're looking at those pictures of the reflection and stuff. It's not exactly the same, but it's similar. And then there's some other reality down here that we're not seeing the complete thing of. So it's like these stratified layers of reality that there's this tension that's the churning the milk that is creating. Like when you have like raw milk, you have the milk and then the cream comes to the top and it's like these different layers, and the cream is the part that the people cherish, right? The cream is the treat and the milk is like the regular stuff. Oh yeah, this is, yep. Look at this one here. But these looks like, look at this one where it's like the snake wrapped around. No, this one, it's got a lot of the blue ocean. Look how there's like, it looks like a reflection down below, right? Like it looks like this, which we are talking about. Look at these all, this is fascinating.
This story for me has been always like so attractive, you know. I'm like one of those things that sparkles and calls you, but I still haven't kind of cracked it entirely, but
okay,
you see, you get the,
yeah, there's, look at how it's reflecting in, right? There's the the rope also looks like it could be the surface of the water, and then the reflection is below that, right? That is slightly different, but very similar. Go back to the story on Wikipedia. I want to call your attention to one part, and then I'm going to show you something. Okay, so
I think it's here. Yeah.
Okay, so that one. So Mount Mandara, a spur of Mount Meru, the world axis, was torn out to use as a churning stick, and it was steadied at the bottom of the ocean, right? Okay, stop sharing for a second. There's a chick who, like, when I did that class at the Vesica Institute, her name, and I think she's been interviewed on a couple things. I've wanted to interview her. I don't know why I haven't. Maybe I will now. I know she's been on Crow's show. Her name is Mandara Cromwell, right? And she owns this company called she does cymatics, right? So let me find her.
And also the vesica, sometimes it has the obelisk, which could also represent the churning of the ocean.
Let me see if I can find what I'm looking for here. Hold on a second. So she has this machine that generates a vibration that creates acoustic intelligence. Okay. And she calls this, like, this is like her website, her stuff right here. So that thing, that spur on that Mount Meru is called Mandara, Mount Mandara. So this woman named Mandara Cromwell is making what she calls sound flowers and star songs. So if that mount has like a vibration that it creates that projects some kind of reality around it like this to make it look like some magical wonderland or whatever, right? Like, that's kind of fascinating. Let me just go to some. So this is her. This is Mandara Cromwell. She was teaching. But look at it's all her stuff is about like vibrational reality and like, right. That's, I mean, her entire, this is what her entire, she's been on Crow, so you can see that there. She does like sound therapy, but look at all of the different geometries and realities that her machine that creates these vibrations makes, right? So like, we think that maybe she, like, I'm going to make up a story here that maybe her parents named her Mandara after Mount Mandara. But maybe we don't understand how time works, and Mount Mandara is named after her because she learned how to create these vibrational harmonies that created like kingdoms that you could see and feel sometimes.
All right, okay. I'm back. I hope nobody noticed, but yeah, continue. Mandara. Right.
So Mandara Cromwell is creating vibratory realities that create these beautiful scapes to look at and sounds to hear and whatnot, right? And we think that, my guess would be she's named after that story, but maybe that story is really about her. maybe that place is named after her because this person was making these sounds with their device, and eventually there was like an entire reality that did that, maybe through chanting or through some kind of thing, or we don't know, right? We assume that history works in this linear way, that, you know, everything that was before us was somehow grander and more important, and we're just living in, like, you know, the reflection of that. We don't know. We don't know.
And like, when thinking of the reflection of the buildings, it also makes me think, maybe you've already mentioned this sometime, but yeah, time like working on both directions at the same time, and that's why one past can activate the present, or the future. Yeah, that's
what that movie Tenet is about. It's about two realities that are right next to each other, and in one way time goes this way and one way time goes that way. So if something bad happens in the one where time is going this way, they can go over into the other reality and get out ahead of it and stop it from happening over there. Right? Which is like what kind of where the movie is about. Like they like reverse bullets and all this kind of weird stuff. But this is exactly what you're talking about. So when we see this other world that we think is just a reflection of the water, what if there's like another Austin just on the other side of whatever the barrier is, where time is going in the opposite direction? Right? Where instead of moving into the future, time is moving into the past, right? You know, and so there's an Emily there that is creating what we think of as history with the story I'm telling you now, right? Who knows, right? I'm instead of me trying to figure out the stories from the past, me telling you this is creating it for the future over there, right? Who knows? But it's fun to think about.
Yeah, and even when they, you know, they start going back in archaeology, etc., and they discovered ancient cities that they didn't even know were there, and they bring like new evidence of and paint a different picture of the past. So it's kind of like whatever we are doing now is creating the opportunity for something to appear in the past, kind of like a fruit. And changing everything around it, everything around it in time.
I mean, this is part of also the idea with like epigenetics, right? And ancestral healing, right? That like, let's say you have a history of alcoholism in your family and you're the first person to finally get sober. That can obviously prevent it from carrying on in the future, because your child will not see you doing those things and learn those habits. So your child, the future generations will be less likely. But also the healing moves backwards. And if time is not, if all the realities are happening concurrently, but in different dimensions, that healing extends into the other reality that we think of as the past. And that person is able to change their behavior and back and back and back to where you can literally, you know, sort of edit out the destructive behavior from all of the timelines over time. And, you know, heal history in both directions, right? Change the future, change the past with an action you take right now, right? So the Bruce Lipton stuff with epigenetics is sort of like not having your life dictated by your genetics, just looking at it as like a range of possibilities that you get to choose amongst, but also the idea that healing can go forward and backwards, right? It isn't just, you know, one way, that everything that you experience is determined by that what happened before you. It can go the other way as well. So
I'm trying to find a comment I posted one of our videos on Reddit once, where one of the things we touched, and I guess I put it in the title, was healing the past or something like that. Yeah. And I remember somebody commenting like, oh, when I saw the healing the past, I changed the thing or whatever. Like they didn't like that idea.
Yeah. Right? Some people, right? Like that, there's some people that are very offended by that because they're incredibly attached, even if it's to their own detriment, to the idea of linear time that only moves in one direction, right? If tomorrow the announcement was made, like, because this is how people think it's going to happen when something comes true, that there's going to be disclosure and the government will send the president out on the steps of the White House and he will tell you, ladies and gentlemen, it has been discovered that time moves in both directions, right? And if it happened like that, like people would like lose their fucking shit, right? Because like, you know, like with the, you know, like, you know, this is not, and so because we've been taught, everything we've done in our life is with the idea in mind, right? That you you prepare for the future. Everything is thinking out ahead. Maybe you can reflect on the past, but mostly as an indicator of what you should do in the future, right? If suddenly, and think about how many people walk around with regret about something they did. And all this time they could have moved back in time to fix it, but they didn't know. And now they can. All of a sudden, everyone's going to be running backwards, right? And then no one's going to be worrying about so this person that was upset about that, I understand that. Some people think these things are silly and whatever, but we have our entire lives riding on accepting space and time as it's been described, right? Or that the earth is round, right? Or that, this is good for you and that, vegetables are good for you and meat is bad for you. Everyone builds their life around some fundamental thing that they believe to be true because that's what they were told. And if something happens that shakes up that belief, you even see it with like some people who can't, even though it's been proven at this point that a low-fat diet isn't good for you, because they were so into that in the 90s, they can't let go of that. And so they're still worried about eating butter, worried about whatever. Meanwhile, they eat a lot of sugar and pasta, this and that, pizza, whatever it is, right? People have hard time accepting the reality that they believed to exist is not true.
Yeah, I found it's the first one we did this year. It was called, I titled it Time, Space, Shape-Shifting Cat People and How to Rewrite the Past. And at the bottom, I think it was maybe the first comment, one guy said, rewrite the past in quotes, right? He would rewrite the past. Yeah, no, that was his comment.
He must have he must not have any regrets. Right, he must be one of the right. It's just, but it's just like, that's okay. Like there's certain things,
of course.
There's certain things that I hear and I'm like, yeah, no, right?
Because you have to be open to other things first. So for me, the way that I kind of work with this idea is more in a meditative state or a kind of visualization or something like that. So a kind of self-induction or whatever you would call it, where you kind of you center yourself and you look for that power within you where you feel like the authority to claim for yourself, for your ancestors, for your, I don't know, even your cousins, and from now to the future, that this thing that you have discovered that is being expressed through you, but that you understood through inner work, that it's a recurring theme from the family tree or whatever, that starting from now and into the past and into the future, this is finished, kaput, the end of that. And from now on, we are seeing this thing in this other positive way, and you affirm it, and you communicate with your subconscious where that seed is planted, and you kind of take that seed out and put something else.
And there's a variety of ways you can do this, right? You can offer up your own healing to all of your relatives, past and future. And if they want it, they can take it. And if they don't want, they don't have to, right? You can communicate. Like I have this cousin who I never met, at least not knowingly, and most of my family didn't seem to have anything to do with, who I communicate with sometimes, and he explains to me about his craft, right? And it's like, okay, like, like and so far, like the things that he shares with me are interesting, and they're helpful and useful information to me. My dad doesn't seem interested. His mother didn't seem interested. I'm interested. And so he's offering from the past information to someone in the future who wants to receive it. And I do, and they don't, and that's cool, right? And so what you're talking about, you can do that. You can make that claim that here, I have discovered this thing, and it's available to everyone who's been connected to me, past, present, or future. And they can take it if they want and not if they don't, right? What I find the most fascinating thing, my favorite thing about the comment from that guy is I love that he was totally okay with the idea of shape-shifting cat people, but rewriting the past was a step too far for him. Right?
Yeah.
All right, my friend. I got to wrap it up.
Okay, very good. This has been great. Thank you so much for your time. I think we went very, very far out with time. I love when we get into this kind of like, I don't know, kind of live investigation, live research, something like that. I like how we merge like the spiritual thing, or more like, I'm not an authority on the subject, but kind of more like the traditional human tradition thing, and your like very out there ideas and kind of futuristic ideas, they kind of merge very well, and they dance together very nicely. And I think we are churning some oceans. So, again, thank you so much, Emily. Thank you everybody for watching, for being there with us, for hopping along the ride. Yeah, any final comments, any links that you want to share, whatever?
No, just I imagine if people are listening to this, they heard him in the first segment, but you can link to everything at emilycmoyer.com. So
awesome. Yeah, and I'll have links in the description. All right. Thank you so much, Emily. Have a nice new year, end of the year, start of the new year. If we don't see each other before that. And yeah, again, extremely happy and grateful for knowing you, for having these opportunities to chat and to share all these crazy ideas with somebody else.
Okay, when you stop the thing, stay in the room for a second. I tell you.
All right. Bye, everybody. Bye.